architectural principles. So there will be certain architectural principles associated while devising any framework. So when you incorporate IoT in a system and or incorporate the existing application, there would be certain principles or there would be certain constraints associated with your design. Okay. So those architectural principles are looked upon by the REST services. Fine. So I can say it as the REST is a set of architectural principles with the help of which you can design web services and web APIs. Using architectural principle, what we can do, we can design web services and web APIs. Okay. Now, whatever web services and web APIs we design, all of these APIs will focus on the other aspects. What other aspects is that now when you are developing any, let's say we are developing any application. So in the application, there would be certain constraints which are associated to what are your requirements, how do you want to develop it. That is associated in your architectural principle. The other thing which you look about is the system resources. Okay, so I'll mark this as one and this as second. Okay, now if I would like to summarize it once again, what I'll say, your REST is a set of architectural principles by which you can design web services and web APIs which focus on the system resources. Okay, and how these resource states are actually addressed and how are these transferred between the other web services. Okay, so this is the actual summarization of what does REST do. When we are talking about the REST based communication API, there is an underlying communication model associated to it. Okay, so any API which is based upon REST, so I'll say it as REST APIs, these APIs will follow the request and response communication model. Okay, so the model which we had discussed previously, where you have a client and a server, and when you are sending the request and the response between the client and server, your server would also uh, have a connection with the resources. Okay, so there are two constraints which we have discussed as of now. One is the constraint which is associated to web services, and the other is constraints which is associated to the system resources. Okay, so both of these constraints, where are all of these constraints applied? So in general, if I want to say it as, I would say that the REST architectural constraints, okay, where would these be applied to? These can be applied to the components. Okay, these can also be applied to certain connectors, some data elements as well. Okay, and all of these components, connectors, and data elements are distributed across the entire system. Fine. Any doubts till now? Is it clear? So
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is the initial. So this is the initial basic of any REST API, any REST-based communication API. So if I want to further elaborate, what are the other architectural constraints which are associated to this? So in a summary, I told you that these architectural constraints are normally applied to components, connectors, and data elements. Now, if I want to divide these components, connectors, and data elements into the actual entities which are there, I would involve a client server. There would be states associated to the server. So we'll have to discuss about states. Okay. When we're talking about states, we'll have to discuss whether these have a stateful or a stateless system. Okay. So when we are specifically talking about a REST communication API and or the REST architectural constraints, if I briefly discuss first point, which is a client server. So I'll talk about A, that is client and server. Okay, so the constraint is a client server constraint. Now the major principle behind a client server constraint is that whatever concerns are there with respect to the client or with respect to the server, all of these concerns will be separate. What does this mean? That if there is certain resource or process which is associated with a client, can only be handled by the client. In that case, you will not require the help of server. Okay, so we'll say that the first is that there is a separation of concern. First point. Okay, so if I want to elaborate what is separation of concern, what would this mean? That your clients should not be concerned with whatever is stored at the server. Also, your server should not be concerned whatever is stored at the client. Okay, so you are not, so neither the client nor the server would be concerned with the storage of data. Okay, is it clear? Okay, so the next point here is that if I talk about separation of concern, this separation allows both the client and server to be independently developed and updated. So it would be an independent development as well as updation of client and server. Okay, so the first architectural constraint in a REST system is that the constraint would involve both the client and server. Neither the client nor the server would be interested in identifying how is the storage at either of these ends utilized and what data is stored at client, what data is stored at server. Now, since both of them are distinct, neither of them is interested or neither of them is concerned about the storage of data. This would mean that you can develop both the client and server independently, as well as you can update the resources or the processes which are associated to client and server on its own. Okay. Now, the second point is talking about state. And we are talking about state in a REST-based system. Since we were using a request and response model, here also the state is a stateless system. Okay, this is the constraint associated to the REST system. So in a stateless, what does this mean? That each request from client to the server must contain all of the information which is necessary to understand the request. Okay, because we are not concerned with whatever request and response message pairs have been circulated before between the client and server. Whenever you want any information to be conveyed from either of these ends, because your system is a stateless system, when you will be sending the request from client to the server, there would be information or there would be all information necessary to understand this particular request at the server end. Okay, why this is done? Because your system cannot take advantage of any stored content on the server. Fine. In such a system, the session state is kept entirely on the client. Okay, so regulation of the session state would always be done by the client. Fine.
Can
Now,
you please repeat stateless?
so in stateless, what does this mean? We cannot take advantages of what information was communicated between the client and server previously. Neither the client would have the information of the previous messages, nor the server has the information. So whenever any request has to be satisfied by the server, that request entire information should be sent by the client in the entire message. Okay, so when I'm sending this first message, what all resources I require, what all previous data which was required, or whatever information is associated to address current request will be sent to the server. Okay, so that
Okay.
you do not require any other information or any other reference. The next is talking about cacheability. Okay, now the cache constraints majorly require that the data within a response. So when we are talking about this request and response, okay, so if I have any cache constraint, this would mean that your data within a response to a request, okay, this should either be implicitly cached or it should be explicitly labeled that the data should be cached or should not be cached. What does this mean? That whenever we are sending the request response, along with the request and responses, there should be a label. Either it should be an implicit label or it should be explicitly labeled, that whatever data is being communicated from both of the ends, should it be cached or should it not be cached? Okay, making it as a system which is cacheable or non-cacheable. So if it is said that if that a response is cacheable, this would be notified from the server itself, because server here is a stateless server. Okay, so if a response is said to be cacheable, then at the client end, a client cache would be developed. Okay, this particular client cache is given the right to reuse this response data for later requests. Okay, so whenever the client want to send in multiple requests at some time later on, he can use this particular data. Okay, now does this mean that you will cache the entire response, or does this mean that you'll cache some sort of information which is present in the response? Here, when we are talking about caching at the client end, this means that you can either have a partial caching or you can completely eliminate some interactions which have been happening between the client and server. Okay, why do we do that? We do this just to improve the efficiency and scalability of the cache at the client. So we'll just make an important note here that when we are talking about a cacheable system, here if I want to make cache at the client end, I would make it a partially cacheable system, just to improve the efficiency and scalability of the system. Okay. So if I want to have a system again, I'll make a diagram and explain it. So this is an HTTP client. Okay. With your HTTP client, there would be some packets circulated. So these will be HTTP packets. Okay. Then your server would also be an HTTP server. Okay. Now when an HTTP client sends the information to the HTTP server, that client would be referred as a REST aware HTTP client. Okay. When this client sends in an HTTP packet, so he'll send an HTTP packet. What would be that packet associated to? What information would it be? That would also be an HTTP command. Okay. What are the HTTP commands? Let's say these are get, it's a post, it can be put, it can be delete. Okay. This would be forwarded to your HTTP server. Fine. Now your HTTP server can have the services like processes like the one which is associated to authorization. It can have the other system like this would be a RESTful web service. Okay. Now with your command, whenever you are setting, you have the data is also associated to it. So that data would be part of your REST payload. Okay. For your payload, the underlying technologies which can be used is JSON or you can use XML. Okay. Now, when you are sending, let's say you are sending the request from the client to the server. So this is the request. There would be a response generated. So this would be a bidirectional system. Also, your server might require some other resources. So for that, you can use the resources as well. Okay. Now, what happens is you might be having multiple resources into your system. How do you identify that this is a particular resource which will be using it? For that, every resource has a URI associated, that is Uniform Resource Indicator. So let's say there are two URIs. One would be the talking about representation of the resource. Same way here also you'll have representation. URI is the representation and then you are having this resource. Okay. So as of now we have discussed three constraints. One was the client server, the other one was the stateless, and the next one was the cacheable. Okay. Next, if I want to discuss further constraints, your further constraints would be that any REST-based API, communication-based API system will be a layered system. Okay, same, the next point would be on the basis of uniform interface, and we'll talk about a final constraint, which is code on demand. Okay, so let's talk about uniform interface first. Okay, so your uniform interface constraint normally requires that the method of communication between a client and server should actually be a uniform. So when we are communicating between the client and server, whatever method you are using, it should be same from both the cases. So client will also be using the same model, server will also be using the same model. And normally when we are identifying the resources are identified in the requests. When the request is made, the resources are identified. Resources identified in requests. Okay, how do you identify this? With the help of URI. So we have the URIs in by URIs in your web-based systems. Okay, and there are separate representations of all of these resources which are present or which are available for both of the client and the server. Now, when a client holds a representation of a resource, what does this mean? In such case, it has all the information which is required to update or delete that particular resource. Okay, for this deletion or the updation, every message which the client sends, includes same thing, that it includes the enough information to describe how would the process be associated, or how to process that particular message. Now let's say you are talking about that your client is currently holding a printer resource. Okay, so if it wants to do any operation on that particular printer, that resource first of all would be identified with a proper URI. Okay, also your client is currently holding this URI. Fine. Now when your client holds certain representation of a resource, what does it has to do? It has all the information which is required to update or delete this particular resource. Fine. Along with this, what needs to be considered is that client should have the permission, or client should have the authority to do those updation or message sending or the deletion. So this summarizes that your client should have the rights to process this particular printer. Okay. Now when your client would send in the message, each message would have the enough amount of information to describe how to process this particular message. So your message would be processed by the printer only. So whatever information you want or whatever operation you want to do on this end will be present into that particular message. Okay. Next is your code on demand. What does this mean is that in case of a code on demand, your servers play major role. Okay, so your servers can provide the executable codes or scripts for the clients. Okay, so if a client want to access any independent script or which needs to be run on your server resources. In that case, your server can provide the executable codes or scripts for the client to execute in whatever way the client wants them to be executed. Okay, this constraint which is provided, that is a code on demand, is normally optional in certain APIs. It is not necessary that every API will have this constraint, that is a code on demand constraint. Okay, finally we come back to the layered system. Now in a layered system constraint, the behavior of components is normally regulated. So here we are talking about the behavior of components. Okay, how is it regulated? The Let's say there are 5 pairs of client and server. Okay, now if I say that there are 5 pairs of client and server, this would obviously mean that there are multiple servers like printers and any other resource servers associated. Okay, so in a layered system, what would happen? The behavior of the component such that each component here and here. Okay, so when this client and server is accessing a resource, this client and server is accessing a resource, this is accessing a resource. Also, there can be a situation where this client and server is accessing this resource. Okay, this would mean that each component will not be able to see the immediate layer, or it cannot see beyond the immediate layer with which they are actually interacting. So this client and server will not be aware that it is interacting with any other resource connected to a different client server model. Okay, obviously this means that even if your resources are present at a remote location, your individual component would not be aware of the site from which the data is being extracted. Okay, also this means that your client cannot tell whether it is connected directly to the server or it is having say any other path, that is intermediate path along the way of connection to the server. Okay, what advantage does this thing offer you is that this gives you a higher system scalability. Scalability is increased. Okay, the entire system scalability can be improved by allowing the intermediaries to respond to the request instead of the actual end server, without actually making the client aware of the fact that the response is being generated from a near location. Okay, now the entire REST based or a RESTful web service. So I told you that in your server, you're having a RESTful web service. Okay. So the RESTful web service, what is this? This is a web API. So in any server which is actually having a facility to have REST system, or it supports the REST based communication, this will have a web service which is a web API. And when this web API is present, this is implemented using the HTTP and the REST principles. Okay, so I already told you here that this communication between the client and server is done using the REST API. Okay, also the interaction which is being used, or the communication model which is being used, is a request and response model used by REST. Okay, now this RESTful web service is normally a collection of resources which are requested by the independent URIs. Okay, so here the client sends the request to these URIs using the methods which are defined by the HTTP protocol. So these methods are get, post or delete. Okay. The RESTful web service also supports various media types. So we have which can be part of your payload. Okay. So we have JSON, which is normally a very popular media type for any RESTful web service. We can also have, along with this, we can also have IP. Okay, so this IP is generally used for Smart Objects Alliance, which is, I can refer it as IPSO Alliance. Okay, so this is an IP for Smart Objects Alliance, and this has published multiple application frameworks which define the RESTful design for use in the IoT system. Okay, so if I want to summarize the entire REST-based communication API, what you just need to do say is that in a REST-based API, you will have certain architectural constraints or principles which are used to design the web services and web APIs, which would also make use of certain system resources. Now, since your REST API is a request and response communication model, there can be multiple architectural constraints in the form of client server, stateless, cacheable, layered system, uniform interface, code on demand. And all of these constraints are normally applied on the components, connectors, and data elements of any IoT system. Okay, any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now the next communication API which we'll be discussing is a WebSocket based. Okay, before moving forward with this WebSocket based communication API, I'll give you certain questions. Note down those questions and tell me the answers for them. Right. Okay. Um, write the questions. First question. We have discussed about fog computing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Brief introductions I have given you about it. Okay. Um, write the first question. How does fog computing, how does fog computing reduce latency? How does fog computing reduce latency and the resources necessary to transport data for processing? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I'll repeat the question once again. How does fog computing reduce latency and the resources necessary to transport data for processing? Next question. Is fog used for processing or communicating or for controlling? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Next, what are clients, brokers, and topics? What are clients, brokers, and topics? How many questions are there? Three questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these are the questions. Figure out the answers of these questions. Okay. And you can submit them within a day or two. I hope I have discussed these briefly in the class.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with the WebSockets.
We have to mail them.
You upload it in the classroom.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you can submit it handwritten. You can submit it handwritten. Whatever you want, you can do it. There isn't any restriction on it. Okay, so we'll now be discussing about the WebSocket based APIs. So I'll briefly tell you about this. Okay, so the internet is not working as of now. You will not be able to see on screen. I'll verbally tell you how is it. Now talking about the web-based communication API. Okay, so normally in a WebSocket API, that is a WebSocket based API, you have a bidirectional communication, which is a obviously full duplex communication. Okay, so there is a full duplex communication between both the client and server. The underlying communication model which your WebSocket APIs use is a exclusive pair communication model. So if you recall it, when we are talking about an exclusive pair communication model, we need not require a situation where your client sends in the request to the server for establishing the connection. How would it do? It would use an already open connection. Okay. So normally when we were talking about in a REST, we have a request and response API. Okay. So unlike your request and response APIs, which was there in the REST, your WebSocket will allow a full duplex communication. Okay. And it would not require a new connection to be set up for each message to be sent. Fine. Clear till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the WebSocket communication normally begins with a connection setup request sent by the client to the server. Okay. This particular request is normally sent over HTTP. As of now, what all APIs which we are discussing, these will be considering HTTP. Okay. So here also this request which is sent over the HTTP and by the client, and when the server receives it, it would interpret as an upgrade request. Okay. So did we discuss SSL in our previous course? In SSL, when you are communicating between the client and server, it is normally said that you are having a handshake. So here also there is a WebSocket handshake, but this WebSocket handshake is an upgrade request. Okay. Now, if your server supports the WebSocket protocol, then the server responds to the WebSocket handshake response. Okay. He will reply back with a WebSocket handshake response. Okay. Now, this would mean that there would be a proper connection which is established. So, after the connection is set up, the client and server can send your data messages to each other in a full duplex mode. Okay. The reason of using a WebSocket API is that your WebSocket APIs reduce the network traffic and latency, which is avoided or which is reduced by using an existing connection or having an upgrade in connection. Okay. So I'll repeat it that your WebSocket APIs normally reduce the network traffic and latency since there is no overhead for the initial connection setup and no overhead in the termination request for every message. Okay. So this makes your WebSockets more suitable for IoT applications which have very low latency or require high throughput. Okay, this was obviously not happening in a REST based communication API. Okay, so this leads us to the thing that whenever we want a proper communication model as an underlying communication model to communicate between the resources and the server, we need to figure it out that which application will be used for having the communication, or for what particular underlying application are we establishing this framework. If we are having a framework for such applications which are in need of lower latency, or the higher applications, although the heavy applications normally require high latency, or and these will have low throughputs. Okay, so in those applications which have low latency or high throughput requirements, we'll try to have the underlying communication API as the WebSocket based API. Okay. So if I repeat, how does the WebSocket protocol does work is, first is there would be an initial handshake done, which will be over HTTP. Next, when the server validates that it also has the WebSocket protocol, then there would be a bidirectional communication. Okay. This bidirectional communication will obviously be over the persistent WebSocket connection. Fine. Next, if you require, then you can send the requests for closing the connection. Okay. The
Yes, ma'am.
constraints which are there in the REST, as of now, these are not considered in the WebSocket protocol. Okay. You guys can see the screen.
Yes,
Fine.
ma'am.
Now, after this, we'll discuss about the IoT levels and the places of their deployment. So it would be deployment templates. Okay. Now, before moving on to the IoT levels, let's first visit what are the system components or what an IoT system comprises of. What are the components in any IoT system? So the smallest component which we'll consider here it as device. Okay. So there is an IoT device. What will this IoT device do? This IoT device would allow, first point is it will have any identification associated to it. Okay. Then it can be any sensor, so it would be doing a remote sensing system. Okay. It can also be an actuator, so it would be doing an actuation or an it would be actuating. Okay. Also, it can be a monitoring system. So it would be a remote system with remote monitoring capabilities. So any component which has following or which allows all of these four things, will be referred as device. We discussed about this in our previous class also. Okay. Next is you'll have something called as resource. Okay. So normally the resource is a software component. Okay. This software component is running on the IoT device. Okay. So when it is a let's say when it is a normal server, it would be referred as that it is used for accessing, it can be used for processing, it can also be used for storing the data which is collected by the sensors. It is used also for controlling the actuators which are connected to the other devices. Okay, so I can say that resource is a software component, or these resources are software components on the IoT devices for accessing, processing, and storing sensor information. Okay. Also, the resources can include the software components that enable the network access for this particular device. Okay. The next component is your controller service. Okay. This controller service is actually a baseline service, or we can say it as a native service. Okay. Which will run on the device and it interacts with the web service. Okay. So this controller service will be running on the devices and will further interact with the web service. So web service would obviously, we discussed about two web services. Normally it would be a REST based or it can be a WebSocket based. Okay. What does this controller service do? This controller service would send the data from the device to web service and further receives the commands from the applications. Okay. I hope controller service is clear. Okay. Next thing is your database. Now this particular database can either be local or it can be present on the cloud. Fine. Normally this particular database is the data which is generated by the IoT device. And finally we are talking about the component as web service. Okay, so these web services actually serve as a link between the IoT device, the application, the database, and analysis components. Okay, so these are the web services which will link all of these components. Okay, and these web services can be implemented using the HTTP and REST principles or by using the WebSocket protocol. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about the first level, which is an IoT level 1. Okay, so what will I do? There would be a system which would either be local and the other one would be cloud. So this is IoT level 1, which have some component which is present locally and some component which are present at the cloud level. Okay, so the IoT level 1 or a level 1 IoT system, what does it have? It has a single node associated to it, or when I'm talking about single node, it can be either a single device also. Okay, so there would be only a single device that performs the entire function, that is the sensing or actuation or storage of the data or the performance analysis, and it also hosts the application within it. So I'll make this system. So this is a node. Okay, I'll mark it as it's a monitoring node. Fine. This monitoring node does analysis and stores the data. Okay, now what are the other components which are missing? I would have a device. So I can make this as a device only. Also, you will have resource. Okay. Then you will have controller service. Your controller service will further integrate with your database. Okay. Then I told you that there will be web services also. So there would be REST or WebSocket based services. Also, your application will be local. So I made application here as well. Your application can communicate with the REST or the WebSocket services. Okay. Also, the communication between the app and services will be a REST or WebSocket communication. So, what communication model is that particular service supporting? We'll be using that. Okay. So, you can see here that in a IoT level 1, there is nothing which has been shifted onto cloud. Okay. So, this level 1 IoT systems are suitable for modeling the low cost. So, I'll write it here. Low cost, low complexity. Okay, those applications which incur low cost and low complexity. Okay, also where the data involved is not a very big data, so we would have required cloud. Okay, so here the data involved is not big. Also, the analysis requirements are not very computationally expensive. Also, these are not very computationally intensive. Okay, so in any IoT level 1, or if I want to rephrase it, your IoT level 1 system or architecture would be required when you want a system which needs to have low cost. Also, the application or the components which are part of it would incur you low complexity, which are computationally intensive, which are not computationally intensive, and you do not require the usage of cloud. Okay, now if I want to move on to an advanced level, which is an IoT level 2. Okay, so here again I'll divide the system as cloud and local. Okay, so in this system, what will be there? There will be a single node. So here also I'll have a single node. Okay, this single node will perform same task, that is sensing, actuation, and local analysis. So if it is a single node and does this task, where would it be placed? It would be placed here. I'll mark that this as again the monitoring node. Okay, same thing here, device will be here. It's a bidirectional connection with the resource and with the controller service. Okay, now here there is a chance that your data size is larger. So your data is stored in the cloud. Okay, also we can have applications which are heavier. Therefore, I can also shift my applications to the cloud. Okay, so in an IoT level 2, your data is stored in the cloud and the application is usually cloud based. Okay, so this would have my application. I'll have the controller service. This will have my database. Okay, with your database, who interacts? My web servers, web socket service. or it can be a REST based, whatever it is, REST or okay. Your controller service will interact with this. Your applications will interact with this. Okay, so for this and for this, there would be a communication model utilized. Clear? Now, in this IoT level 2, I made that there is a single node which performs the sensing, actuation, and local analysis. Data is stored in cloud, and application is usually the application. Okay, so if I have such sort of architecture, the level 2 IoT systems are suitable for those solutions where the data involved is big. Okay. However, the initial analysis or the primary analysis requirement is not very computationally intensive, so it can be done locally. Okay. Any doubts till now? Should I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, I'll come to a different level, that is level 3. Okay. Going back, now what modification can we do over here? What modification can we do from 2 to 3? In your 2, the sensing, actuation, and local analysis was done in the local section. If I want to have an IoT level 3 architecture, what I can do here is that this storage, that is your data storage and analysis. Okay, this thing can be shifted onto the cloud. So in your level 2, you had your monitoring node here, and this was your cloud. Here, your cloud was only regulating storage. This was doing analysis. Okay. Now, if I move this analysis from locally to the cloud, so in your IoT level 3, there can be only one change. I'll make it here. This is local, this is cloud. So this node, it is still a single node. Okay. And your cloud involved here will do both the analysis and storage. Rest everything can be referred as same. Okay. So if I do this, now the level 3 IoT systems will be suitable for those solutions where your data involved is big and the analysis requirements are also computationally intensive. Okay. But as of now, I'm only considering that here also in your level 3, you have a system which has only a single node. Okay. If I modify this level 3 to a level 4, this level 4 will now have multiple nodes. Instead of going on with the single node, which was done initially, we'll have multiple nodes. If I have multiple nodes, so for each node, there will be a section of data, resource, and controller service. Okay. So I'll modify here. This is local and cloud. This has two nodes. For these two nodes, I'll have device, resource, controller service. Okay. Here I'll have only one database. These individual controller services will be communicating with the, let's say I'm requiring REST, so I'll require REST services.
Ma'am, here we have common REST services for both of them or separate one.
We'll have a separate controller service.
Ma'am, actually for REST.
Acha, you're talking about REST services?
Mm,
Since I made it at the cloud end, na, so I do not require different REST services. It can be shared with all of the devices.
Okay.
So I'll have an application with this. You can interact. Okay. What is next? So now, along with these existing components, there is one more component which is observer node. So there is an observer node at the local end, also an observer node at the cloud end. Now this observer node will be regulating or interacting with the REST services. Same way as this will be interacting here also with the REST services. The communication here will be either REST based or a WebSocket based. Okay. Also, this application will be integrating with the analytics component. Okay. So to summarize, what is here? The IoT level 4 system, it has multiple nodes. Okay, so you'll have the cloud. Okay, it has multiple nodes. This node will perform the local analysis. So you'll have a local analysis done. Okay, your data is stored in the cloud and application is also cloud based. Okay, the level 4 also contains local and cloud based observer nodes. Now these observer nodes are the ones which can subscribe to and receive the information collected in the cloud from the IoT devices. So the information respect to the IoT devices will be stored at the databases which can be accessed by the REST services with the help of REST services. So these observer nodes which are present at both the local and cloud end can subscribe to and receive the information collected in the cloud from these IoT devices. Okay, such IoT systems are suitable for those solutions where the multiple nodes are required. Also, the data involved is very big and the analysis requirements are very computationally intensive. Okay, now the last modification which we can now have is that the there isn't any coordination between these multiple nodes. Okay, so in level 5 there is only one extra node which is added in the interface between the local and cloud. So I'll have one node here called as coordinator node. Okay, now this coordinator node will majorly be collecting the data from these nodes, and it would be sending it to the cloud. So in a level 5, the existing monitoring nodes will now be referred as routers or endpoints. Okay, these end nodes or endpoints will perform the sensing or the actuation. So you'll have sensors and actuators which will be doing this task. Their information would be sent on to a coordinator node. This coordinator node would collect the data from the end nodes and send it to the cloud. Now again the same thing, your data is stored and analyzed in the cloud, and application is also cloud based, but the IoT systems level 5 is suitable for WSNs, where we are talking about wireless sensor networks, in which again your data is computationally intensive, the analysis is also computationally intensive, and the data involved is a big data. Okay, so previously in a level 4, the problem which was existing here was that there wasn't any coordination between the monitoring nodes, or there can be possibility that the data is which is being sent to the cloud is sent as a in the form of a redundant data. So that redundancy has been minimized now with the help of the coordinator node in case of a level 5 system. Okay, any doubt?
No.
Is it clear with the whatever has been covered?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll end today's class here itself. You see the questions which I have sent, given it to you. Okay, uh, try to submit the answers by tomorrow evening.
Okay, ma'am.
If you
Okay.
have any doubt in those, we can discuss it in the class. So these do not have any marks associated to them. The question is just a normal self-study sort of assignment.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Also, I'll send you the documents of whatever has been covered in class till now. You can use the reference for it. Okay.
Thank you.